Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the WE Knives Zeta, designed by Elijah Isham, one of my very favorite knife designers working at the moment. First off, though, I want to thank my buddy Jeremy for loaning this guy along. This is a really neat piece, and it's one I've been really curious about, but he was able to get it to me, and actually get it to me on a pretty compressed timeline, so I appreciate that very, very much, Jeremy. Next thing, let's do a little size comparison real quick. Here this guy is against the Spyderco Delica, which is similarly shaped, I guess. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 1 and Rat number 2. So you can see it's not a small knife at all. It's a lot bigger than I expected it to be when I pulled it out of the package here. Here it is against another Elijah Isham design. This is the WE Knives Eschaton, which is an absolutely insane knife, and this is a slightly more sane knife than the Eschaton, but that's not saying all that much. It's like being more sane than Charles Manson. Good for you, but yeah. Anything else that needs to happen here? No, not at the moment. So, let's go ahead. Oh, and then finally a note on the designer. Yeah, this is Elijah Isham. He is really, really cool, has a really defined aesthetic, and got a couple of versions of these, as well as a bunch of new stuff coming in with a whole bunch of different people, so you're seeing them around, no doubt. So let's go ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. This very interesting pocket knife here. So on the good side, first off, this has a very nice low-profile Flippin Tab. What I mean by that is that the Flippin Tab here is not hanging off to the side at all. This knife is completely devoid of the pocket-pecking Flippin Tab that you so often find on other pocket knives that are constantly pecking on whatever's in your pocket throughout the course of the day. This has none of that. It's just it's got as little tab as any other knife, but yet it still flips very reliably. And in fact, that Flippin Tab disappears entirely when the knife is open. That's a really cool thing. And it makes this guy very, very easy to both deploy and to carry. By the way, it also flicks. So you've got this hole here. You can also use that, especially if you've got skill, to flick this guy open here using one of your middle finger, index finger, whatever. It makes it very, very easy. And I guess you could probably thumb it open too. Yeah, there you go. But anyway, so you got a bunch of different options there, but the low-profile Flippin Tabs are always a beautiful thing. 100%. We saw something similar on the Eschaton over here, and I liked it there as well. So that's good. Next thing, this is a nice, easy-to-unlock knife. You can see here you've got some good gap here, but there's also a little bit of prominence of this lock bar area, so you can very easily slide this over, and because it's a relatively thin lock bar, it's not crazy lock bar tension. It just works really well. It's nice to unlock. That's always a joy. Next thing, this has a full lock bar insert. You can see here. It's black metal here, I assume steel. And there is a full over travel stop on it as well. It's well done. No complaints whatsoever. I actually can't quite classify what this thing is. As a knife person, I was mentioning this in my disassembly. I don't know if this is a bolster lock. I don't know if it's a frame lock. I think it's maybe a weird liner lock, but with some titanium on the front. I just don't get it. Whatever the heck it is, it's a lock and it works. So, anyways, there you go. That's good. Next thing, the disassembly on this guy was actually surprisingly easy. Maybe it shouldn't have surprised me all that much because it is kind of a simple knife at some level, but all you need to do is pop these 3 screws out and you're good. Case closed, problem solved. You can see it's well made with ceramics throughout. It's well done for disassembly, and I like that very much. Although, actually, that shouldn't shock me at all given how easy the Eschaton was, and this is like 90% weirder. So there you go. Next thing, this is nice in that as you're holding it, the hand is basically level with the blade. As opposed to on most knives where the blade is, the hand is kind of sticking out in front of the blade. Here it's a little bit behind. That makes this a little bit more effective, especially for these kinds of downward cutting tasks where the blade is going to be sticking out a little bit. That's a nice detail, but it's a nice detail, but it's a good detail. There you go. That makes sense. Next thing, speaking of the blade's great. In a couple of different ways. It is a big old chunk of M390, which is one of the best steels out there at the moment. It is, at least for knife steels. It has a little bit of flat down here. It's got some belly. It's got a point up there, which is good. It's got even a little tiny bit of upsweptness, but not enough that it actually feels really upswept. It's very, very strange. It's ground well to cut, especially further out here. You've got a nice tall grind here, and although the stock is relatively thick, it absolutely does cut. It is absolutely good to go in that domain. And you know what? It's got a very nice sharpening choil here too, which I appreciate, especially given the length of the plunge grind here. I'm digging that. So that's good. And I'm just a big fan of the blade. It is a solid blade for actual utility cutting use. And finally, I'm loving the design here. It's got very nice curves to it, and it flows. I mean, there's a level to which this knife is unexpectedly curvy. At some level, you can see, and especially if you look at some of the other knives in this sort of same pattern that Elijah's done, this one's got some key distinctions. Not only the difference between the carbon fiber and the titanium here, but you've got these nice curving lines here throughout. This is not a straight line, but it's a curving line. You can see that the WE pivot is actually matching that curve here. It's got this nice little area where it kind of downslopes away. There's a concavity here that's really unexpected. And then there are curves all throughout this guy. It's got a little tiny bit of swedge. This was really, really well designed, and it's really attractively designed. And it's one of those designs that you look at it and you're just like, wow, there's a lot of cool complexity here. The curvature on the clip matching the rest of this, it's just freaking well done. So I like very much the design. And I like very much Elijah Isham's designs just in general. He has a very unique design voice where you can take a look at pretty much anything he's made and you're like, I smell some Elijah there. And it's a good smell. That's a really weird, creepy scent. Oh, God. Okay, moving along. So anyways, it's a really nice... it's a really nice design here, and it's a little more subtle than some of Elijah's other work, which also smells great, by the way, like the Eschaton, which is also very much Elijah, but a little bit different. So, anyways, there you go. That's the that's the good here, is that it's got a beautiful design that smells awesome. It's got a wonderful blade. It's got the hand is behind the blade here. Disassembly is pretty damn easy. It's got a lock bar insert with a very nice lock bar tension. Makes it easy to unlock, a nice low profile Flippin Tab, and the option to flip, flick, or thumb open if you desire to. On the great side to me is actually the construction here. This is just beautifully made. It has just a great grind. I'm looking at this grind and it's just like, wow, that's really, really well done. WE Knives, by the way, the folks who made this, do really good work. So the grind is really great and it's ground to cut. The finishing is really great. I mean, the contouring here is excellent. You're not seeing machining marks. You're just seeing a beautiful pattern emerge there. You're seeing great screws. These torque screws are spectacular, especially given that WE in the past has used really bad screws. It's nice to see them using really good ones. The materials on it are great with titanium, carbon fiber, M390, and it's just smooth. This deploys so damn well, and then you can see here, it wants to shut. It's so damn smooth, and I'm loving that. So to me, what's the greatest part about this, although I went back and forth between this and that beautiful smell and design, is the construction, I think, wins, because it's just so damned well made that I really appreciate that very, very much. So that's the great, is the construction. WE Knives just did an incredible job on this. On the bad side, first off, the clip, unfortunately, is not like super, super springy. It's okay, but and it did work to get in the pocket, but it's one of those clips that I want to have, 20% more spring than it does. I think it would work a little bit better if it did, especially with thicker pads. Not a big deal, but it's a deal. Next thing, unlike the Kaiser Megatherium, which kind of had a similar design where the finger was behind here, this guy lacks the ability to choke up a little bit. I kind of wish, and, actually, maybe I don't wish, but at some level, I do find it a little disappointing that I can't choke up, get a little closer to the blade. I like a finger choil, or at least a flat surface here, but, not a big deal, but it's definitely something to consider. Next thing, as you're flipping this guy, it does have these corners in the back here that are a little bit on the sharp side. They've got these, they're not quite 90-degree edges. They've done some rounding, but that just does mean that as you're pressing this into your hand, it's a little less comfortable than some. I've definitely had knives that are way worse, but that's that lack of rounding there is a little frustrating from time to time. Next thing, the clip, unfortunately, ergonomically speaking, does make a pretty big hot spot here. You can see it's pretty prominent up above the knife, and it's got these sharp edges, especially this front corner here. Means that this isn't as comfortable in the hand as some. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not super comfy. Next thing... Sorry about that. Got a phone call there that came in. But anyways, what I was saying there before that happened is that again, Elijah Isham has this habit of selling the same knife design, or at least a very similar knife design, to a couple of different people. In this case, Kaiser Knives has the Theta, and then WE Knives has the Zeta here. I have to say, having handled both of them, the Zeta is far outclassing that. And I mean, WE Knives is just a much better producer. They're just much better at the higher end stuff than Kaiser is. But the thing is, that makes any time he'll do that kind of thing where he sells a couple of designs that look very similar to different companies, it makes each one have a little bit less cachet, and especially when they're so confusable in terms of name, the Theta and the Zeta, there are going to be a bunch of people who might handle the Kaiser, be pretty unimpressed, and then think, oh, no, I'm done with that, I had that model. But like, no, you didn't have the one you probably wanted to have. And so I don't like that he's doing that thing where he shops roughly the same design to a couple of different companies, and I hope that's something he stops doing, and in the future sticks to one company per design, or maybe better still, sticks to WE, because they seem to be doing his work best. It's not a big deal, but it is something to consider. Next thing, the Flippin Tab on this guy does take a little bit of getting used to. I mean, the first time I deployed it, I did fine with it. But the thing is, unlike a lot of Flippin Tabs where you kind of can pull back along the top here, if you do that, you're actually going to run into the back of the scale here pretty quickly. So just pulling straight back doesn't really do it for you. You don't fully deploy. And similarly, it doesn't work at all if you try and push button it. So really what you're kind of having to do is lever it along. You're going to want to make a little bit of an arc with your finger. And boom, there you go, case freaking closed. It works really well once you get that down, but the thing is, it's a thing, and it's also a little bit sharp. I'd kind of like to see that rounded a little tiny bit more than it is right now. That would be a little bit better. Not a big deal, but it's something that you have to kind of keep in mind that it is very different than most of the Flippin Tabs that we're kind of used to dealing with in the knife community. So there you go. Then finally, or actually not quite finally, this is $300. That's a lot of money to spend on a pocket knife that is at some level relatively vanilla in terms of its construction and whatnot. But at the same time, honestly, I don't have a whole lot of problem with it. It's going to put it out of range for a lot of people, which is why it's in the bad, but at the same time, it's well designed. I mean, look at this contouring here. Look at all that. So, it's not something I'm loving, but it's also something I'm understanding, and so that's kind of the situation. And especially given how much better this is made than the Kaiser version, which is a lot more vanilla in its construction, I'm okay with it, I guess. Maybe a little inconsistent there, but, you know, I love the idea and the quality that you get from being $300, but I dislike the fact that it blocks a lot of people. Maybe I'm a little bit weird there. But one thing I know I am absolutely against is the fact that this is a limited edition knife. You can see here, this is number 512 out of 700. What that means is that WE Knives has ahead of time committed to abandoning this model, unceremoniously. I dislike limited edition kinds of things, especially for a good model. I think that it's kind of silly to make a model that's, you know, from the start limited edition, because let's face it, nobody's looking at this going, wow, I'm going to be exclusive. No, come on, guys. No, it's just going to mean that I'm not going to be able to recommend this for a long time. If this gets really popular, they're not going to make enough of them. And so I dislike that. I just make it a normal knife. If you don't sell a lot of them, don't make any more of them. And if you do, you keep making them, and then a lot of people get a good knife. Maybe some people disagree with me that way, but 700 is not like a limited collector's number edition or anything like that. That just means we're making too damn many of these knives, but not quite enough to actually meet the eventual demand, if it's as good as they thought it was going to be. So, damn it, guys, stop with the limited editions. It's $300, which is, I think, a price they've earned, but also a very high price for a lot of people. The Flippin Tab does take some getting used to, although it does definitely work. Elijah has shopped similar knives around to a couple of different people, and each time that kind of diminishes the specialness of any one of them. It's got the clip hot spot pretty seriously. The rear corners are maybe a little sharp. You don't have the ability to choke up, and the clip isn't super springy here. On the ugly side, there is only one ugly issue, and that is right down here. You can see here that the rear edge, that the edge of the knife is actually relatively close to the surface here on the rear. It's not a huge deal. This is not so much as dangerous as I have had on other knives, like the Liangma KUF or the Arcform Slimfoot, those kinds of things. Those were just like, this is dangerous. Or the Kaiser Matanzas, critical, that kind of thing. This is more just like creepy. It's like you see that edge right there, and I can reach down there and touch it with my relatively small fingers. And so what that would mean is that if I owned this in the long term, I would probably not shop in this part down here quite as much as I shop in the part up here, just to be a little bit extra safe. It's got the full back spacer, which I appreciate, but I really do want another millimeter or so a handle on this guy just to make that a little bit safer. And so to me at least, I find that ugly. It's like, just don't play with it. Give yourself a little bit of extra margin. This is safety we're talking about, but it's not quite so bad bad as some, so do what you do with that. But final conclusions here. I think that this is actually a nice knife, and it is a more practical knife from Elijah Isham. Like I said, I've had the Megatherium, I've had the Eschaton here. This is a knife that I feel like is going to be a good knife for a lot of people. It cuts well, it carries well, it's made well, it looks great, and it's a design piece still, but it's a lot more accessible, it's a lot more useful, it's a lot more just everyday friendly. It's still absolutely got some downsides. The hot spots, the Flippin Tab, that's kind of an acquired taste. A pretty up there kind of price, and the closed edge that's a little tiny bit on the creepy side. But honestly, it's a good knife. It's beautifully made. WE has done great work. Elijah has done great work making it pretty. There's a lot to love here. And so ultimately, this knife, kind of more than most, I think, comes down to the design. If you don't like Elijah's work, well, guess what? You're not going to like it here either, because it's very distinctly him. He's one of those folks like the Todd Begg types, where it's just like, yep, that's him. And so if you don't like it, you're not going to like it. If you're just looking for a pocket knife, if you're watching this video thinking, oh, man, I need a great knife, maybe this is going to be the one. Yeah, very well could be, but if that's all you're after, you can do a lot better. Well, maybe not a lot better, but you can get a whole bunch of knives that are really good under the $300 price tag of this one. But the thing is, if you are the target market here, if you are a person who loves Elijah's design work, then this is just a really great way to get a nice combination of art and everyday carry friendliness in a single package at a price that's not so stratospheric. And so, in that case, if you're loving the design here, then buy this knife is a very easy thing to Zeta you. Okay. Anyways, we hope you found this interesting and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.